Hello, 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 hello. How are you doing? Let's see how this goes. Mic check. Mic check. All right. So I'm gonna hang in there for a second and let people know that I'm doing my thing, and then we're gonna get started. All right. Okay. So a few people might pop in here. So with my new format, I don't want to get started quite yet. I want to see if I can get people to pop in before I get going. I'm doing less than my typical half hour. It's been a long day. There we go. We got a viewer. That's all I was looking for. One viewer. There we go. We got our one viewer. Sweet. All right. So today's at work is going to be a little different because I was at work like a regular job today, and it was a long first day. And so I'm actually a little tired and didn't get any drawing done today. So I'm going to show you a quick little video presentation and kind of talk about what you're going to be seeing. The episode will still, of course, end up on my YouTube channel, which you can see a link on my Twitch page. Just scroll down. There's a link to YouTube, DeviantArt, a bunch of other stuff. So let's get into it, and I'm going to show you this relatively cool, and now all of a sudden there's no volume. Let's see here, what happened to my volume? It was cool, I had volume. There we go. Okay. So what you're seeing right now is how every single page in my comic book begins, and that is a program called Design Doll. Over to the right, you're seeing pretty much the main characters for the last few pages. This is my file for the comic book, and if I need another character, I have a bunch of other like models already built, and then if not, then I'll just build them on the fly. And a couple videos ago, I think page 18, you saw that happen where I had to build a character on the fly in the program. But like that guy right there, Simon, and in the distance, Fiona, it's like a 3D animated cartoon. I only had to make them once, and now they're always the proper dimension and height and weight. And I basically use them for my breakdowns. I tried to use a different program made by Smith Micro, but I just couldn't get the program to work. There was a bunch of weird bugs in it, and their customer support didn't really help me. And at the time, I was really busy with a full-time job than I have now, and so I just ditched it and kept drawing from scratch. A friend of mine on Facebook showed me this program, and it is a huge difference maker, as this program allows me to do hours and hours and hours of work in maybe like 1 hour. So what you're seeing is the switch to Photoshop is the basic page breakdown. Those are the panels and some notes to remind myself what that page is about. And then each one of these sections post Photoshop is basically posing my characters and taking a photo, and so in this sequence, I think yesterday's episode showed you just a little bit of the final touches on this page. So tonight I figured I'd just show you how I got from the end of the video last night, or to the podcast last night, or stream, to basically how it all began. So this is a bigger page. It's 7 panels, a lot of information. But the reason there's so many panels on this page is because it's basically one continuous scene. So it's only going to take, about a few minutes or so. And I wonder can you guys hear this music? Because I can't. And I didn't want the music to be completely gone. And it is. So I'm going to turn on my music just a little bit, and hopefully that'll pick up some of it. That's disappointing. And so now I'm placing those JPEGs from Design Doll, because now I basically have 2D images on my actual comic book page. Now, the images that are sent to me after I export them to Photoshop are like 96 DPI, which isn't terribly big. So before I send them over to put them on the actual page, I make them about 350 DPI. And the only reason for that is when I go to zoom in on my work surface, I get clarity and distinction, and so it's easier to then draw my basic breakdowns. So the breakdowns still get done, but it's quicker, like absurdly quicker. There are some drawbacks to this process. One, I have to be careful that I don't cut off my image too much before I even get started, because then what happens is they don't quite fit the panel as I would like. But it's a process, and if it gets to the point where it's like really bad, it just doesn't work for me at all, it's as simple a task as reopening Design Doll, putting the poses back together how I had them, or new poses, and taking a different picture, a better picture. So it's still like, even if I make adjustments, they're easy adjustments. In this scene, basically, it's like the climax of the issue. It's towards the end, and there's going to be a big sort of final moment of action that'll end the issue. Kind of on a cliffhanger. I'm not gonna do the whole, are these guys gonna die this issue? Because I'm just not gonna kill anybody in that sense. So there's no point in threatening it all the time. So now I'm trying to keep organized, and I'm making my folders so that when I go in to draw, I have a little bit more space. Okay, so now I'm moving to the section where I actually draw the breakdown. And this is also now where I can make some adjustments, because even though I have 3D models and they are posed where I want them to, their dimensions aren't exactly perfect. As you can see, especially with Simon's arms, that the dolls tend to break really easily. So I have to be very careful. And so because I don't want to use Design Doll as too much of a crutch, I leave the models themselves imperfect in some ways, and that really forces me to make the most out of this particular section of the process, because here is where I can make certain adjustments, like the size of their ears need to be a little smaller than the models have. They don't really let you play with that too much. I can fluctuate certain joints and certain appendages to make them more dramatic or less dramatic as I need. Basically I have the Design Doll template, but I'm trying really hard to maintain as much flexibility. And so in terms of how quickly the work gets done, I want to be able to still sort of be, moving at a timely rate of speed. Now, these videos are at 6 times normal speed, so these are going a lot faster than the actual process takes. And basically, these videos are in a playlist individually, so you can see them in smaller parts. This is about 18 minutes. That represents maybe 3 or 4 hours in real time, and to get from zero to primary pencils done in 3 or 4 hours is a testament to how useful to me on an individual level Design Doll is. Because basically I can always create perspective in ways that might prove too challenging to do them from scratch. And at this point, my desire to get the books done conflicts with my desire to go out of my comfort zone in something I'm going to literally put out for public consumption. I don't want to waste an opportunity by playing it safe. So, like, angles like this, I might spend all afternoon just sort of getting that angle right, because you're drawing in perspective. And to do that from scratch is not impossible, but it just takes longer than your standard image, and your proportions end up suffering, especially if you're struggling with getting the basic perspective down. And so that's where the timetable really is. So if you're sitting there going, wait a minute, you're just going to go in there and draw over it anyway, well, what's the point? The point is the perspective, the foreshortening, the foreshadowing, the camera angles, all those things, the attempt to make the images look a little more visually interesting, even when they're technically at rest, because it's a cop drama, and I don't need a bunch of cool poses necessarily. I want them to have mannerisms that are a bit more mundane, for lack of a better term. So I can still get interesting poses at speed, essentially, so that I'm not spending a great deal of time on one image because I can't quite get the arm to look like it's coming out at the reader as much as I want. I no longer have to be concerned with that at all, because every single pose is set out the exact way I see it in my mind's eye without much of the difficulty. And then really putting on the breakdown, the basic shapes from art classes and stuff is a form of practice as well, because eventually I may not need Design Doll so much. Also, the other issue is, or not issue, but the other option is, I want to start incorporating Cinema 4D into some of this aspect of the work. Now, Cinema 4D gives you a lot more to work with in terms of what the program has to offer. And because of that, I might find myself in a position where I can literally get more of the steps done in a 3D sense before I ever put pencil to the page, including stuff like this. There's a way in Cinema 4D to use an Illustrate tool to create illustrations, basic illustrations based on the 3D models. Now, my resistance to that is, I feel like when I do my breakdowns and eventually get rid of the layer that shows the 3D models, and all I have now is a breakdown that I would typically draw with my style, I'm not bound or married to the basic design of the 3D models. That's why it's so important, despite having the breakdowns technically done in 3D, to still make my two-dimensional breakdowns, because now that's my art. You know what I mean? Like, so from this point on, when I start drawing the characters at different stages, it looks like me and my art style and my skill level, and not the artist who created the 3D engine and the 3D models. So in this particular scene, the apartment they're going into is dark, and I talked about this last night when I got into the end of this video. Basically, the end of this video is where last night's stream started. Okay, so this is going to be one of the darker, like, poorly lit pages. In the apartment, because there's no natural light, it's going to be pitch black except for maybe some like emergency track lights. So when I get to the color phase, you're going to have a really, really dark, gloomy, kind of shadowed area, but at the exact same time, you're going to also see like flicks of ambient light, and I'll use those little bits of light to create a hue and a color over my characters to kind of put them in the room in more of a real sense. So Like when right now Fiona is, they're basically checking the rooms. They're going from room to room, like, the whole clear. We've seen that in a bunch of different cop dramas. They're going from room to room looking to make sure there's no one inside there. And so when she goes to poke her head in and kind of peer into the room, you'll see the blue light like very lightly reflect off of her skin and clothing. The same thing for Simon. And then I'll use a red hue as the issue that they're facing becomes more clear. Now I have to be careful. Simon, like I said, is like stronger than even your average meta-human. He's super meta-human. He's very, very strong and therefore very, very durable. So him being surprised is sort of a tough sell, because nothing he encounters for the most part can actually hurt him. And I have to keep that in mind, that surprise is based on your expectation. And if you're essentially invincible, then a guy with a gun doesn't surprise you. Certain things we would consider dangerous or deadly, if they're not really surprising. I can't look at something dangerous to me and then assume that Simon, who is not a character who at one point was quote unquote normal and then received powers, so he doesn't have any of those old convictions or knee-jerk reactions to fall upon. He was born into the world super, so he can't be surprised by much. So I have to remember that when I start drawing the scenes and putting in, the details that denote their emotional state, that Simon can't look like his mind's being blown, because what he sees isn't really a threat to him. And that's also important, because how the scene ends, the fact that Simon he just can't be in any real danger for the most part. How the scene ends speaks to how difficult it is for these characters to deal, in the world they're in, because the assumption is that they shouldn't be afraid of anything, that they shouldn't react to anything in a negative fashion. They are extraordinarily durable, extraordinarily long-lived. They're going to be young and vital for years to come. They're an army of Captain Americas, essentially, without really going with that sort of motif, because, well, America as a country doesn't quite exist in the same fashion. It's called the Western Alliance. And so I keep going back to the root of everything when I tell my stories, with my premise being ever present in my mind. So Simon's response to what he sees has to be more of a disturbing image and not necessarily a shocking or scary one, because, well, nothing's really going to scare or shock him. He's just, his mind isn't wired that way to be afraid or shocked by anything he sees. He's too strong, he's too invulnerable, he's too invincible for those sorts of things to happen. So that's going to be a hard sort of thing to sell with just visuals and dialogue. You don't see any of the word bubbles at this point in any of the videos I have. Some of the early pages do have everything down to the word bubble, and then there's just layers that need to be cleaned up and tweaked and fixed, so those pages still aren't done, but they're like 95% there. The color I wanted is there. The feeling of artificial light is there in some of those early pages 1 through 5 or 6. When I get to 7 through 10, it's a little less done per page, because I felt like it was taking me forever, because at first I was trying to literally do one whole page from start to finish and then move on to the next page, like I was writing a book. And the problem with that is you learn as you go. And since this is still in a lot of ways new to me, I was literally learning too much to go page by page. So by the time I get to page 9 and page 10, the books start losing, the story starts losing a certain level of uniformity, because it looks like, well, what artist came on to page 10 and took over? Because, man, it's a whole different ballgame. And that's when I realized I had to stop before it got too late and too far into the project to stop with any kind of helpfulness. I decided to stop, and do all my pencils, then do all my inks. That way, as I move through the process of doing the pencils remain uniform from page to page. It limits the changes I might make and forces me to sort of remember that not only am I telling a comic book story, I'm telling a visual story that has to be consistent. So it bugs me if I don't feel like Fiona looks like Fiona on every page. And there's a lot of work to be done. Like we're getting to this image here. I don't like this picture, this one cell. I don't like how her facial expressions work. I have to go back in there and probably do that all over again. Last night's episode, I did a good amount of it and just didn't like it. Even live, I didn't care for it. So at some point, as I get down to the last few pages and it's now finalizing all the pencils on all the pages so that they're uniform and consistent, I'm gonna have to really go in there, and that's it. Wow, I finished pretty fast. So here, just to finish up my thoughts, I'll show you guys this video.
You need a website. Why not do it yourself?
I took off the ads for the one I was for the last video you just saw because I wanted it to be more of a presentation and not like, well, what you just saw there. Oh, hey, I got my own ad on. Wow, that's cool. I'm live on Twitch. Start watching. I didn't know that even did that, but it did that. That was kind of neat. Okay, so this is page 18, and this is backgrounds. I decided to do my backgrounds in my pencil phase so that it was done, and I got sort of the a better representation of what was going on for the viewer of these videos. Because for me, I know the rules of production, but those rules usually stipulate more than one person. So certain things I just don't worry too much about because I'm my own artist. I'm my own writer. I can powwow with myself and make changes on the fly, and I'm not worried about it being a logistical issue where all of a sudden I have to go back and find myself across the country and convince myself to make some changes. It's all me. I'm kind of like the Donald Trump said something stupid that it would never be useful for running a country, but it's kind of my philosophy for doing these comic books. I consult myself. I can when I'm writing in the writing phase, it's all writing, and then I try and make sure that I do not consider how difficult a particular image or a series of images might be to tell. I just go in there and I do it. And I just write it like someone else is going to draw that's not me, a better artist than myself. And then when it's time to draw, I have to go back and remember how I challenged myself and like kind of like live up to the challenge or rise to the occasion. And I don't always. Some people like my art, a lot of people don't. I am in the camp of don't at this point. Like I don't know how you're supposed to like your art so much, because then like, what are you still doing it for if your art's so great? My art's not great. I want it to be great. I like the idea that people might like it, but I don't think I'm supposed to like it myself. I'm supposed to be disappointed, or not disappointed, but at least unsatisfied with what I'm doing. And I want to make sure I never lose that sort of unfair, disdain for my own work, because that makes me try and do better the next time. And the hard thing about trying to draw a comic book like this is, well, what does next time really mean for someone I'm asking to pay money for my product? I gotta kind of get it right this time on some level, and so it's kind of it's always a work in progress at that point, and so as long as if my work changes, you can see a progression that's like forward, getting better at art, not worse, then I'll take it. I just don't want to look back at like these books in 2 or 3 years and feel like I didn't get my shit together until issue 8. That's 7 issues of work I'm not exactly impressed with. And I don't know that I'm supposed to be fully impressed with my work, but I just, I want to be proud of it. And I think I'm there. I think that in these early stages, it's a little rough around the edges, and it's kind of hard to see how it's all going to turn out. But I'm excited that once the first issue launches and you really get a chance to see the book in its entirety with not only the artwork but the dialogue and word bubbles, and you'll see like where my approach really lies, because one of the things I'm interested or excited to show people is, unlike traditional comic books, my comic books don't have any editorial boxes. There's no noir effect. There's no aspect where I tell you what the characters are thinking. I try and take on a sort of cinematic attempt as best I can, so that the idea is that the action and the dialogue describes what the characters are thinking to themselves when they behave. And I won't know if I got that right until this book launches and I get people to take a look at it. And then I'll know if not having the omniscient voice explain a character's motivation works. But if it doesn't work, then I know that I have to go ahead and bite the bullet and narrate my story. At this point, I don't think I need to. I still have use for that omniscient voice, but it's kind of a trick. It's an exposition trick I use, where essentially, and this seems a perfect example, while Kofi is climbing up this like wooden sort of thing into his girlfriend's apartment, he's not talking, and there's no omniscient voice explaining what he's doing. Instead, I'm just going to let the viewer or the reader hear what another character has to say as it relates to Kofi, and that's sort of like a cheap substitute for the omniscient voice. But I don't want to ever let the reader think that there's a watcher, so that's one of the reasons it's so important that Max is around in every single major book. So you have MPD, and then a book called Delta, and then the third book is called Dark Overlord, and the fourth book is called Legend of the Raven Dark. The fifth book is called False Dichotomy. The sixth book is called The New World Chronicles. And the New World Chronicles may actually go for more than 12 issues. It might go for like 36 issues, depending on really how I feel and how things are going. Because that's the book that's supposed to lead to like the end of this whole story, and you'll get the beginning of a comic book universe. Now, there's another chapter at the end called Clandestiny, but I don't know how I want to implement that. I'm thinking about having that just be like the last 12 issues of the New World Chronicles, like basically book proper. So yeah, that's it. So this is how my process goes. I gotta work tomorrow, but I'm hoping to steal a little bit of time with some new fresh art. So there should be some actual work to show, like live work, but also like I don't know, I don't have an overwhelming number of viewers quite yet, which is to be expected. But I gotta keep churning these videos out, and every chance a new viewer pops in, it's always a chance to display what I'm working on and what I want them to see. So if this tends to work out better throughout the week, if it's just easier to put together a little video presentation and sort of give you an update on what I'm working on, then I will do more of these. And then when I have those days off while I'm home all day sort of doing my thing, then the more traditional live Photoshop session will be where it's at. But I'm gonna call it a night, man. It's been a long day at work. I had fun, but I definitely need to unwind for a little bit, think about maybe some Dragon Age Inquisition, figure out what was wrong with my computer last night. Might do some of that, and then like sleep my butt off, get up first thing in the morning, do it all over again. But I'll probably see if I can drag my laptop with me to work, and on my lunch break record some fresh video. And if I can, then maybe what I'll do is, if I can only get about 30 or 40 minutes of drawing in at work, and then maybe come home and get another 2 hours in before it's time to broadcast. If I can get all the videos processed in time, then because I kind of like this format. If people pop in and watch and ask questions, this format's way easier to address people who are asking questions on the fly than before if I have a pen in my hand and I'm looking over to my left to see the screen. The first night I did this on Twitch, I had a few people come in and talk to me while I was working, and I thought that was great, but it was hard to focus on my drawing and answer questions. So if I do it this way, where you can just see me working, it kind of makes sense for the title of the show too, then I can also interact with people more who might have questions. And I'm hoping to spread the word more and get more people to be interested in what I'm doing. So thanks again for tuning in, and I will definitely see you guys next time.